to our Kandinsky image. Hopefully you've drawn out all the shapes and you're happy with them, rubbed out any lines that you don't need anymore. If you found that you did your lines quite dark, then just go over them lightly with a rubber, okay? So I'm going to show you two different materials today. I've got the watercolour pencils that we use in school. I know lots of you have these in your art pack, or you've had some recently. If you don't have them, don't worry. Maybe you've got some other just normal pencils that you could use that you feel confident with, okay? I've also got some acrylic paint. I know not all of you have got acrylic paint, but again, I know some of you have requested it, and I've left some in reception for you. And I know some of you had some that you got from your art packs, or you've got some at home anyway. Okay, so I'm going to start with the acrylic paint. Okay, so I've got a couple of paintbrushes, okay, just my water pot, and I'm going to focus today on blending, okay, because that's the thing that you'll see a lot of in Kandinsky's work. There's quite a lot of blending in there. You can see where it goes from really dark, medium, and then lighter areas. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is start at the top. Okay, that's where it's darkest. Now I've got my blue, black and white. So what I'm going to need to do first, if you look at my image, it is almost black at the top, but there is some blue in there that I can see. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but it's definitely not completely black at the top. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, okay, a little bit of black to the side. I'm going to get some of my blue, mix it in, okay, still a little bit too dark, a bit more blue in there. Okay, I'm happy with that for the darkest areas. Okay, so darkest area is this bit here. It's not right at the top. It's sort of a little bit lighter. So I'm going to start about here, and I'm just going to place it on. Now, actually, I'm doing it in sort of brush strokes across here, but actually, I think Kandinsky does these sort of almost like a stippling effect that we've practiced this in school when we did our acrylic painting. So if you see this kind of effect on Kandinsky's, okay, it's not always, not on all the work, okay, then think back to your acrylic painting techniques that we did. Okay, it sort of fades out and it looks like there's sort of colour underneath, so I'm going to sort of just fade it out, and there's some sort of down here as well. And there's some at the bottom, just need a bit more paint in there. Okay, so I'm not having too much paint because his work isn't really sort of textured, you know, in pasto. It's not really thick. Although with stippling, it is actually quite thin paint. Just a bit more at the edge there. Okay, so just sort of like dab in a bit more at the top, because I'm going to put some blue over the top of this. Just carry on around that edge. Bit more at the end. Okay, so now I need to rinse out my brush because I don't want that dark colour anymore. Okay, remember, if you're in doubt, then just rinse out in between, okay, because you're going to contaminate the next colour. Again, you can use like some scrap paper to wipe the excess water off your brush. As you know, I tend to just use my hand. Okay, so the next colour I'm going to get is just the main blue. I think it's a fairly good match anyway, but sometimes you might need to mix your colours. When you're mixing colours, think about warm and cool. Think, is this colour more on the warm side or the cool side? And then from there you should know which colour to add in. Remember, reds, oranges, yellows are the warm colours, and purples and blues, some greens are the cooler colours. If a green had more yellow in rather than blue, so if it had more yellow, it would be a warmer colour. Okay, if it had more blue in the green, it would be a cooler colour. Okay, right, so I've got my blue. So I'm going to carry on with this sort of stippling effect. Okay, and I'm just going to overlap, not too much because I do want that part to be quite dark. So I'm just going to overlap those bits there. Let's get a bit more paint on the brush. And again, think about the size of your work, think about the size of your brush. Is it a suitable colour? Is it a suitable size even, sorry. Okay, mine's quite a large brush really. I'll need to go and tidy up the edges later on. So again, I'm just stippling. Okay, if I had a bit more time, down the bottom here I've noticed that it's actually a bit more purpley. Okay, so if you've got purple, then you can obviously use that. If you don't, then obviously you can mix red and blue together to get purple. Okay, so if I had a bit more time, I would definitely do that. Right, I'm just going to neaten up some of the edges. I might see how it goes with this brush. Yeah, I think I want to use a smaller brush. So I'm going to use this size, okay, just to sort of tidy up those edges. And remember, with your hard edge painting, okay, place it on the paper and take it across, okay, but keep your hand rested on the surface that you're working on, okay. Now that's really important. If you kind of going like this, it's going to be quite unsteady. Okay, so if you remember back to hard edge painting, so I'm just going to do it again on another side just to remind you. Okay, so I've got the brush on the paper, okay, and I'm making sure that I'm on the side of the shape that I want to paint. I'm not sort of leaning over on this edge because it's going to go over that line. I don't want it to, because that one's white and red. Okay, so I'm always leaning on the side where I want the paint to be, because if I press down too hard, it doesn't matter because that's where the paint's going anyway. Okay, so just one more time, hard edge painting. So to stay in the lines, rest your hand on the table and make sure, keep it nice and steady, use the full length of the brush stroke. Okay, so the next sort of stage that I need to do, especially on this side here, is I've actually got like a lighter sort of blue that I need to do. So I'm going to rinse out my brush because I don't want that contaminated. You might use some scrap paper. I wipe the excess water on my hand. So I'm going to get a little bit of the blue. Actually, I'm going to put the white to one side because I felt like that was too much blue. Okay, now students often do this and waste lots of paint. So if I've got quite a light colour, okay, it's best to start off with that first and add in the darker colour, because if I start trying to make that the colour that I want, so for example, I'm going to have to use loads of white because that blue is going to consume it, look. Okay, so it's going to take me longer and it's going to waste more of my paint to get to the lighter colour that I want. Okay, so I've got the colour that I want. Okay, it is a little bit under this shape here. Okay, so I'm just going to dab it on and I need to blend it into the blue. It's not quite the darker blue, it's the normal blue. So I'm rinsing out my brush. Let's get my picture back up. rinsing out my brush. I'm getting a little bit of my blue on my paintbrush, like that. And while this is still wet, okay, I'm just going to place it next to it, and hopefully it's going to start to blend in. I think it's dried out a little bit while I was talking. So if that happens, rinse out your brush, get rid of the excess water, and just place your brush over the middle, and as you can see, it's kind of lifting off some of that dark paint for me, and it's blending. Okay, remember your paintbrush will be contaminated, so if you want to do more blending, you need to make sure that brush is rinsed. Get rid of the excess water. It's especially important when you're working quite small, okay, because you don't want to flood your page with water. Okay, so that's the acrylic paint side of things. Okay, I'm going to work on the other side and show you the coloured pencils next. Okay, like I said, you might have some just normal pencils that you could use. They don't have to be the watercolour ones necessarily, but it does give you another option, which I'll show you in a moment. So I'm just identifying the colours that I need. Okay, so I'm actually looking to do this sort of yellow orangey, kind of slightly off to the side diamond. Okay, this one here. Okay, so I'm trying to identify the colours that I need. So at the moment, I know I'm probably going to need white. If you remember, we use white to blend a lot. Definitely need my yellow. There's definitely some kind of orange going on in there, and quite a warm brown. Okay, so I think it's more of a warm brown than, let's say, a darker brown like this one. Okay, so I'm going to put that one back. I'm just having a look at any other colours that I can see in there. There's sort of that darker brown at the bottom, but I think that colour will be fine for that with a bit of yellow. And this, because it's overlapped on the blue, there's sort of some green in there. So I'm going to need to try and identify which kind of green. And it might be that you have to try some of this out. I'm not sure if that's going to be a bit too light. I'll have to try it out and mix it with my brown. Okay, possibly might put this one out too. Okay, so I've identified all my colours. I don't think I'm going to need any black, but if I wanted to make any of my colours darker, what I would do is put black underneath. I think what I'll do is find an area, potentially that red I'll show you now. So let's say I wanted to make an area darker, and the pencils I've got, they're not quite the right colour, they're not quite dark enough. So I'm trying to show you on here. So I'm just gonna focus on this sort of area round here to show you some blending. So in this corner here, it's quite dark, okay, and I've identified maybe this sort of red, possibly with a little bit of purple on there. Okay, but we'll stick with that for a moment, see how it goes. So I need a darker red. Okay, I haven't got one. So I'm going to place the black pencil on the area where it's darker. I'm not going to press down too hard at the moment. Okay, because if I press down too hard and I make it opaque, like this, like really dark, my red isn't really going to show up over the top. Okay, so you need to keep the pressure not really light, okay, but you have to make a judgment, and that's why sometimes it's best, like we've done in class, to practice on some scrap paper, colour mixing like you would a palette. Think of your scrap paper as a palette. Okay, now it does sort of fade out and get a little bit lighter, so I'm going to have to take the pressure off and start to blend it out, make it a bit lighter. Okay, I don't want to spend too long doing this because I know I've been talking for over 15 minutes now, and I want to move on a little bit with the colour mixing. Okay, so I've got my dark colours underneath now. It might not always be black as well. It could be that it's just another dark colour, like a navy blue or a dark purple. Now over the top, okay, I'm going to press down a little bit more firmly, okay, to get my darker red. So you can see the difference of how this red that I'm doing at the moment is very different from that one. Okay, so you can mix your colours with the colour pencils. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit on my yellow diamond, and then we will stop. Okay, so in this yellow diamond I have this, the easiest bit I think is probably that yellow bit at the top, so we'll have a little look at that. Okay, now the problem I've got is that I'm using yellow, and actually I think this outline is a little bit too dark, because as you know, normal pencil is going to blend in with that yellow. So I'm just going to try and lighten it up. Okay, happier with that now. Okay, at the edges it's kind of a little bit dark. I can actually see a little tiny bit of green. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that on there, but I'm sort of identifying other colours that I wasn't expecting to start with. So I'm just going to put a little bit of green on the edges, maybe a little bit of that darker green as well, because I can see it's a little bit darker around the edges. And also I can see that I don't think this, just colouring it in this yellow is going to be sufficient. There are areas where it's a little bit darker. For example, here it's a little bit more sort of orangey kind of brown. So I'm just going to lightly place some of that colour underneath, ready for my yellow to be placed on the top. Possibly a little bit of brown. I feel like the orange is a little bit bright. So just really, really lightly getting some of that, those sort of darker colours in. So then over the top, okay, with my yellow, I'm going to be pressing down a lot more firmly. Now I want to keep it lighter in the middle because I notice it's quite light in the middle. I'm going to go over that with white. So I'm making it opaque now because I'm pressing down a lot more firmly. Kandinsky's work is quite nice and bright, although it's blended, it's quite nice and bright in places. Okay, I've left that light a bit in the middle. I feel like I need to make it a bit more circular, that shape. Okay, and then I'm going to press down firmly with my white just to bring out that highlight a little bit more, taking the pressure off as I go towards the outer edges. Okay, remember when you go over with white, okay, that's it really. It's quite hard to then go back and then start changing colours. Okay, white's the last thing that you use, okay, and it's really good to help to blend. Okay, I'm going to do the more complicated section down here now. Remember I said about it's got this kind of sort of green and a bit of brown. I think I'm going to need to use a mixture of both of those greens actually, and a little bit of brown in there as well. Okay, so in areas on this one, there's areas where of the green where it's sort of dark and light. So I'm going to need to vary the pressure that I'm applying to my pencil. I think it's not quite the right green, so I'm going to mix this one over the top, and a sort of little bit of green a bit further down, and then I'm going to use my warm brown. Okay, and I'm going to do it quite lightly. It's not a really majorly sort of dark brown. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it with a white, sort of to blend it all in. I'm going to place my brown over the green a bit more to make it less obvious. A bit more, still a bit obvious actually. I actually do think I'm going to need that darker brown. It looks a bit too red compared to the one on my screen. So lightly, I'm just going over the top. So this is the importance of having some scrap paper and using it like your palette really. Okay, I'm happy with that now. So what I can do now, because I want to blend it all, is I'm going to press down firmly with my white pencil to blend it all in. Okay. Right, another option for you is you could use, if you've got watercolour pencils, a nice clean paint pot, not like the one I've got here. Okay, get some clean water. You could actually make this into a watercolour piece. Okay, so just by placing a little bit of water onto your watercolours. Now, you must be careful because here, I know that I definitely want it lighter, but my paintbrush, if you can see there, is contaminated with the black pencil and the red. So I definitely want it lighter on that side. So I'm going to need to rinse it out in a nice clean pot. Get rid of the excess water. Okay, so that's much better now. Okay, so watercolours. Okay. Now, if you've got any other ideas of anything you want to use, that's perfectly fine. You do not have to do acrylic. You do not have to do colour pencil. You do not have to put water on it. You might decide that you want to do a tonal version. Okay. You might decide that you want to use watercolours because you feel really confident with them. You might have some oil pastels that you would like to use, but I recommend working a little bit bigger. Okay, thank you.